One ongoing challenge that could be news literally every night in America is how workers are faring and the challenges they're facing, from disruptions in work, from the inflation that has cut into salaries and raises over the past year, to post-pandemic clashes over labor rights, to these strikes by workers across industries, from the arts to car companies. Some see a resurgence of labor organizing. The Hollywood strike drew extra attention, while healthcare workers and teachers have been driving their own headlines and strikes. And now the auto union has used the power of labor strikes to push General Motors into a brand new deal, which is also big news. It's actually the last of Detroit's big three automakers to make a deal after workers have rallied across about 6 weeks of strikes. Here is how it's been going.
This is the first time the UAW has struck all three of the big three U.S. car companies at the same time.
Overnight, the union told almost 13,000 workers to walk off the job.
A loss of production is breaking records. Economic losses have totaled more than $5 billion, according to new data released today.
First Ford, and then Stellantis, Chrysler, Jeep, those cars, and now General Motors, the largest U.S. automaker, have all agreed to terms with the United Auto Workers,
clearing the way for the return of nearly 50,000 workers.
This is a major win for workers, no question about it.
Now, the deal was reached by negotiators. The workers still have to ratify it, and their terms, which include a 25% raise over several years, better retirement, and some issues around electric cars. Now, labor leaders say these results show why workers really need organized labor more than ever. Another difference this time came from the Biden White House, because across history, no president has ever joined a picket line, even back in the days when labor did have historically more power. So of all the recent presidents you see on your screen, for example, including the Democrats, none of them that you see here ever joined a picket line. But President Biden did. This was just last month, the first president to ever join labor that way. And he argued that the right kind of deal would actually be good for both sides, for labor, which he jumped in and backed more than any other president, but also he argued a fair deal would help manufacturers in the wider economy. And the president's actual involvement is also a total substantive contrast to Donald Trump's PR move, where he recognized that labor issue was hot. He went to Michigan and skipped a Republican debate and tried to tap into the publicity. But let's be clear, Donald Trump didn't actually go visit a union site, let alone picket. He huddled with owners in that state and then blurted out his skepticism about picketing at all, a view that other Republicans have long held.
Your current negotiations don't mean as much as you think. I mean, I watch you out there with the pickets, but I don't think you're picketing for the right thing.
Ronald Reagan gave us a great example when federal employees decided they were going to strike. He said, you strike, you're fired. Simple concept to me.
When you have a president that's constantly saying, go union, this is what you get.
Yes, it is what you get. As for that Reagan reference, it goes all the way back to when President Reagan used the federal government's power to face off with the professional staff who keep airplane travel safe.
I must tell those who failed to report for duty this morning, they are in violation of the law, and if they do not report for work within 48 hours, they have forfeited their jobs and will be terminated.
Now, that was one example, and it was not only about private commerce. The government was involved because of safety regulations, but more widely, it's always been a contradiction for conservatives who claim to back freedom and free markets to then attack Americans who choose to exercise their freedom and their labor market power by leveraging that in business, like striking, or using labor power to try to improve benefits or workplace conditions for everybody who goes to work. That's part of your freedom in a free market. Now, the history can be instructive. Biden is, of course, steeped in precedents. He has been a professional in government longer than many people have been alive. And precedents often mean, well, we used to do it this way, we'll keep doing a version of the way we've always done it. And yet this admittedly older president decided now was the time to change the precedent, to pull a reverse Reagan, if you want, on behalf of labor. And as labor's story evolves both through and really beyond some of those past clashes, we got a note tonight that big corporations continue to try to play both sides of this, to try to play you, depending on where you work. Union crackdowns are common. from the old school industries I mentioned, like the auto plants, to some of the new tech like Amazon. And then there are the executives who say, well, if you guys all get organized and you raise, the standards, weekends or higher pay or health benefits, well, we'll just take the jobs overseas. You've heard that before. That's the threat if workers demand, quote unquote, too much. It's a history explored by the 1989 documentary Roger and Me, which introduced many Americans to Flint, Michigan, and its fate after GM shut down the auto plant there.
Hi, I'm Michael Moore. In my hometown of Flint, Michigan, General Motors closed the factories and put 30,000 people out of work. To raise their spirits, I made this movie.
Meanwhile, the more fortunate in Flint were holding their annual Great Gatsby party.
What advice do you have for those who are having a rough go of it?
Get up in the morning and go do something.
Americans learned about Flint and the struggles of millions of daily workers, and maybe a bit about that seemingly young progressive filmmaker, Michael Moore. Yes, you have followed this for so long. What do you see happening here with a constellation of seemingly organic, unrelated activity, and yet also what we call organized labor, strikes working, and at least a partial shift within how the Democratic Party approaches them in the White House?
Yeah, and not just a partial shift. I mean, Joe Biden showing up there on the picket line for the first time ever for a president of the United States to actually take sides and to say, you know what, General Motors and you shareholders, you made off like bandits thanks to the federal government bailing you out in 2008 and 9. And as a result, we have waited 15 long years for the workers to get back some of what they gave up, and they were promised they'd get it back. And I have just read this, actually. I just downloaded this contract here, the tentative contract that the union members have to vote on. Man, I'll tell you, Ari, this is an incredible contract. Now, I'm not a member of the UAW, even though my uncle was in the founding strike of the UAW back in 1936, 37 in Flint, where thousands of workers took over the factories in the middle of winter, locked the doors, moved management outside, and then management went and turned off all the heat and all the water, no electricity, and the workers suffered in there in a brutal winter for 44 days until they brought General Motors to its knees and made them recognize the union. And you're right, this is now something that for many years has gone by the wayside. And, when I was born, I think there was like 30, almost a third, more than a third of the workforce in the United States of America belonged to a union, which meant that we all got health care, free health care, dental care, time off, the 5-day work week, the 8-hour day, all this stuff. And now 6% of the workforce is unionized, 10% if you count in public workers. So it's been a tough few decades since that clip you showed of Ronald Reagan had a mission that was to destroy unions. Ironically, Ronald Reagan, the former president of the Screen Actors Guild union.
Which is back on strike, yeah.
Which is now, ironically, and I am a member of that union, so I am talking to you on strike.
But so about the news, not promoting something, yeah.
Yes, of course. Yes, right. So yes, I can come on a news show like this and talk to you about how to make the world a better place. This is, let me just give you some brief things, because everybody's probably heard 25% pay increase. This says, on top of that, there's now going to be a 33% cost of living increase. In other words, as inflation goes up, your wages will go up. That's 33%. So that means starting workers now are going to start receiving almost 67% increase over what they've been getting. This contract, if you add up everything in this contract, it is more for the auto workers than the previous 4 contracts combined. It's an amazing contract. And all these other protections too. There's, they now have like an ergonomic rep, the union does, to make sure that, people like my dad and my grandfather, my uncles and aunts, my grandmother, was one of the Rosie the Riveters in the Flint factories during World War II, where they switched immediately from making cars to tanks and machine guns and all kinds of. My grandmother was on the AC spark plug line. They switched from spark plugs to bullets to defeat the Nazis and the Axis. So this has done. I can't tell you how good this seems to me. Again, the workers will have to decide and vote on it. But it is a mass. I mean, you know about the two-tier thing, right? So part of what the UAW offered to do back in 2009 is we get paid $25 an hour or whatever. We're going to let you, all new hires from this point on, so you could save money and save the company, are going to come in at $15 an hour. So what you had people working on the assembly line. Right next to you could be somebody making $25 or now $30 an hour. And so the work person next to you is only making 15 or 16 doing the same job. And they made them temp workers. Yeah. You know how they do this, part-time. You know, I remember when I was on the Today Show years and years ago, and during the commercial break, the camera union people had a tin can, and they asked me, and they were asking all the other guests that day to contribute, because one of the workers at NBC, a light had fallen, broke his foot, and they had a tin can to help him with his health care. We fought for all these things. Our grandparents fought for all this stuff so many years ago, where you wouldn't have to worry about that. We went to the dentist. My parents never pulled out a wallet or a purse or anything. It was all covered. We're back to doing this now. This new contract, pension stuff, pension. Young people watching this, look up the word pension, because it doesn't exist anymore. I mean, helping people when they're retired and they're old. This union right now, and Sean Fain, the new elected president, elected by all the members, has fought and told General Motors what you mentioned in the beginning. Yeah, you're just going to tell them you're going to go on strike, and you're not going back until they do the right thing.